All right, welcome back to another episode of Nemo Radio. I liked him so much, and he's so nice, we're going to feature him twice. I'm bringing back... You like that intro, Raul?
I'm not that nice.
Yes, you are. Raul Hernandez is coming back. He has a new book out. And if you missed Raul the first time, I'll link back or I'll find the previous episode where he came on to talk about productivity and whether or not you're the bottleneck in your own business. But Raul has done something really unique that I wanted to bring him back on to the podcast and also do some video with to talk about his new book, Productive Profits, The Founder's Guide to Scaling Your Impact. And so for those that don't know you, Raul, and didn't catch the previous episode, why don't you kind of start with kind of your backstory a little bit, take us through the professional journey to what you're up to today.
Okay. Yeah. So Raul Hernandez based in San Diego. So I actually started in the finance world with JP Morgan Chase Bank, worked up that ladder, but then at the same time was studying online to create a SaaS company. So software as a service. As we were going to create that company, I actually partnered up with someone I've never met physically before. So practicing social, distancing since 2015, 2016.
Nice.
But we had a really great relationship in the online programs that we were in. Didn't create a SaaS. I actually created a boutique, I would say marketing firm, marketing service to help out a niche market at the time. Grew that and then actually decided to stop that and work at larger firms where I've helped to grow up in leadership teams and acquisitions or even mergers to now helping other online digital marketing agencies grow their teams, actually double their teams, as well as myself being able to see the ins and outs of how we can scale communications, how we can scale impact. And when I talk about impact or scaling that, it's not about just like a grand, huge scale, because I know there's like small business owners ask me, well, what does that look like for me? It can be the same impact like of how you deliver your customer experience and your service. Even that small touch point can create a huge ripple effect down the line.
Yeah. And what I liked about Raul, and we've met through a group coaching program, and I actually had you do a lot of consulting for my business. And, I have a small business. Obviously, I'm not some huge Fortune 500 company, but the amount of things that you found and showed me that where I was being the bottleneck in my business, I knew that would really resonate with my audience with Nemo Radio, because we have so many small business owners, coaches, consultants, solopreneurs, people that are kind of running their own show, a lot of us running around like a chicken with our head cut off, our hair on fire, like totally stressed out and overwhelmed. And I have to confession time, like when you first told me all this, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like when I actually started implementing it, it has exponentially helped me grow my company, put a productive team in place, delegate, and just have a system in place to grow effectively, where now I get to do more of what I actually enjoy, which is creating content and selling and doing the things I love, but yet not feeling like the quality has dropped at all for the clients I serve and the deliverables. And that's just been a huge win, huge relief. So before we get into Productive Profits and the book and all the lessons in there, I want to kind of go behind the scenes a little bit. How did you decide to write a book? How did you go about doing this? What were the logistics you put in place? How did you make it happen while you're still doing your job? Because so many people ask me that all the time. And then part two of that long-winded question, Raul, is how are you going to use this as a marketing tool in your business? So part one, let's start with how and why did you decide to write the book? And then how did you physically do it?
Okay. I think the part one is a two-pronged approach, right? So I practice what I preach, and I was actually talking to a client on one of our one-on-ones, and I was like, I need to figure out how to scale my brain, right? Because I can't do this one-on-one all the time. So the book was the easiest and best avenue, not just like what's in the content of the book. I have like additional bonus content, which is it's gonna blow your mind, because it's all in the book, but it's also additional, even more value add. Just make sure that if you follow what's in the book plus the bonus content, you can't go wrong, right? So I really want to do that to scale my brain, but also to reach more people. Who else doesn't know that I exist, and who else can I potentially help? So those are the two main drivers for that. The inspiration to write the book. So I've had this, I would say, formula in place for over a year, but it was over a year of packing 8 to 10 years of experience, right? So you have experience, you have knowledge, but I never really thought about that knowledge in a packaged way, right? Until like over a year ago recently, and where I can actually start packaging that together. And then like John Morgan like kicked me like, hey, you should put that into a book. I'm like, oh, okay, so I should put that into a book. But that knowledge was packaged into an actual protocol, and then that protocol I practiced and preached and then implemented in the businesses that I helped, got results, implemented, iterated, changed, got results. But I actually didn't start putting words to document until late November. I think it was around Thanksgiving time. Because what I did is I used, if you want to go tactical, how like the behind the scenes, I actually spoke it into being. So I used Google Docs' Chrome voice to text. So I literally spoke out for like 20, 30 minutes, parts of the chapter, as long as I could, just like as if I was teaching someone in front of me. So you'd see me in my office just walking around, like talking, like teaching, like, what's this guy doing? So then from there, that was like raw version 1, the ugliest version you could ever see. Like some words that didn't even make sense in the first round of edits. And then it came to like a labor of editing, like a labor of love of roundabouts and edits, and then making it improvements as we go on. But since November, it's been, we published in March. So how many months is that? November, December, January. So I have 4 to 5 months of work.
And how did you find that process? Because I know one of the core things, so many people will come to me and say, especially coaches and consultants, and then you hit on a key point earlier, which is we really need to figure out how to scale ourselves out of a one-on-one interaction, especially if your knowledge can be really valuable. If you want to monetize your brain, your expertise as a coach, consultant, like how do you scale that? Well, a book is one of the best avenues. But so many people struggle with, well, I'm not a writer. And I always say, well, can you talk? And they're like, well, yeah, I can talk all day about coaching. And I'm like, then record it, right? And like, there are even services. I had a guest on, I think his company's called Speak It to Book, but there's all these different techniques you can use to basically, sketch out some ideas, some talking points, riff about it as long as you can, speak it right into a document, get it transcribed, either do it yourself or hire an editor to clean it up. Did you find this process easier to just speak it out and edit it as opposed to sitting down and trying to write? Like, what was kind of your mindset with that, and what did you find to be the reality?
So to give you like a really like look over my shoulder, when I packaged all the information that I knew like into like real actions and the things I implemented and templatized into businesses, that was already written out, but as action cards. Because essentially what I do when I help people is like, okay, we do come up with custom strategies, but most of it is like 80% like principle based. So those principles I have packaged together in like bullet points and then like essential items that are necessary. So I follow a proven system that's worked, right? With those talking cards allow me to then give my perspective on those bullet points. So when I was speaking it, I was reviewing my notes on each section, like literally giving a real consult over the book. So I work best with bullet points, like consult bullet points. And then when I spoke it into writing or speak it to book, right, it was giving the perception of my take on it, how I learned it, how it's applied, why it matters, so that it's easily digestible. And if you notice that I also, when I edited the book, I made it in plain English, so it's easily it's easily digestible. Because a lot of my personal clients, like when we do one-on-ones, they're overwhelmed by this stuff. Like you say the word systems, it's like crash and burn, like no.
Yeah.
Right? So even the layout of like if you get the digital copy, you won't see this, but the layout of the physical book, I've designed it to be comfortable for the eyes, comfortable with design, and then not overwhelming when you're actually going through it. The font size, the layout, how it's presented, as well as having actionable items within each chapter. So you feel like you're making progress, even if you're just thinking about it. right?
Yeah, I think sorry to cut you off, but I think there's great lessons in this for anyone who does content, to create content, to market yourself, to grow your brand, to get people results. What Raul's doing is he's not overwhelming people. He's not doing inside baseball, jargony, fancy words that a lot of people might not know. He's putting it in such plain, simple language that it cannot be misunderstood. And I think that's critical, along with helping people feel like this is doable. There's momentum here. I can get some quick wins. I can take some quick action, because the worst thing in the world, and I've experienced this myself with some of the content I've put out, books and courses, there was too much. And the most successful, programs that I've ever done are, this was really easy. This was really simple. And I got an outcome I wanted. What's next? What's next? The stuff that I did that was really high level and super complex, some people had great success with, but a lot of people just couldn't get through it or get it all done. And I love your approach and the simplicity of it, because I think we live in an era now, Raul, where people are so overwhelmed and so busy and so scattered. Like, you just have to keep it really simple and make it feel like they can accomplish it. So love this stuff. And also, like, just listening to you, your audiobook is going to be perfect because you're so calm. You're so chill. You're so San Diego. You're just like, it's going to be all right. We're going to systemize your business. You're going to be fine. Stop stressing out. How much of your own, when you set out to create this, did you have like a barometer in place or in your mind of how much of yourself you wanted to insert into this? Because a lot of business books can be very dry and it's just principles and strategies. And then other ones can be too self-aggrandizing and it's all about like, look at me, I'm a hero and I'm the greatest. How much of yourself did you put in and how did you balance that?
Yeah, it's like an arm wrestling match, right? So in the first, I think it's the first chapter, like the first preface or whatever, there's a section where it says, this book is more about you than it is about me. Because I hate reading like a whole chapter about the author. And then like, well, what's the action item? Then we talk a little bit principle. What I do is I did want to give the principles, but also give character to them to see, real examples, my personal stories within them, but that apply to the actual point. So you actually get the point across, but you actually feel like, hey, I know what Raul's interested in. So you know that you're actually having a relationship as opposed to just something that's sitting and dry.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because I think too, at the end of the day, if you're going to use a book as a marketing tool to grow your brand, to get new clients, you've got to put enough of yourself in there where people feel like, I like this guy. I know this guy. I trust this guy. He would be fun to work with, or she would be fun to work with. So there is a fine line, like Raul said, the arm wrestling, but it is important to bring yourself into it and not, because if you just give a bunch of dry data and strategies, they'll take that and use it, but they won't connect you to that.
They will remember you as the author. And I think that's the key thing. The first, and going back to the behind the scenes, the first thing to lay out in the book are the principles. So if you're writing a book, always lay out the principles and then always ask yourself, what story can I put on here? What story can I add on here? And if you want, I can find the actual template I used. Like, it was a 4-point template, right? Point, story, why this matters, and key action item, right? So with those things there, like, how can I like show a little bit of the personality without overbearing it? Because people, like, especially CEOs of like fast growing companies, or even for small business owners who, I mean, you don't have the bandwidth to sit there and watch a 20-minute YouTube video just for fun, right? Like, you have to take information and take action and make sure that you're taking the right actions. So that, keeping that in mind as well.
So I love this stuff. And I love, I'm looking at your book page right now and it says that, like, who's this for, right? And people listening are probably like, well, what's this really for? Who is Productive Profits for? And it says, get unstuck from your business, scale your impact, leave the legacy you're created for. And then I love this question that you ask. And this is such a good one to hook people in is, are you the disgruntled employee in your own company? Oh man, yes. Yes. What if you could choose a different path? So let's walk into some of these topics, because you've got great chapters and principles you're kind of bringing out. I want to pick a few out just to have you riff about and talk about some of these topics. One of the early chapters that I'm interested in as I grow my company is, you have chapter 2. It says, easily know your company's pulse at all times. Can you talk more about that? How you can easily know the company's pulse, why that matters so much, kind of the traps people fall into?
Absolutely. So I'll actually answer that with a question for the listeners. Do you know in your company right now the key deadlines that need to happen, the key metrics, and could you find those answers in less than 3 minutes?
Mm. Ugh. This interview's over. Cancel, delete. No.
But
Oh
that
God.
essentially as a
This,
business, so
by the way, this is what I love about Raul. He's like so nice, but he just like literally slices your insides open and then your guts come piling out and you're like, I'm so busted. This is what happened when you consulted for me. You, in the nicest way possible, you eviscerated me and helped me see all these problems. Thank you very much. So keep going. Carry on.
No, so like as business owners and visionaries, everything that I tell my clients is you want to keep your fingers on the pulse. The pulse is your business, the pulse is the market, your pulse is your customers, your pulse is your team. What's going on right now, but your eyes, the vision to the horizon. And I always look out my window when I do this, right? Eyes to the horizon. The purpose of that is that you're working towards achieving a goal. If that's a short-term or long-term goal, or if it's the actual mission and the impact you're trying to hit. But with that focus and the hands on the pulse, you're not going to be living an illusion. You're going to have a reality game plan where you're going to take what you have, make the most out of it, and see if that's the vehicle that's going to help drive the entire mission, not just you, but the entire mission forward.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. And I think of my own story where when you consulted for me, I kind of told you like, this is my big pit. Like I want to work this many hours a week and have this much revenue. And what was so good about having you come in, you were like, okay, well, let's look at what you're already doing and what's actually driving you toward that versus what is not working. And it was very illuminating for me because the stuff I thought I had to do or that was the way, the numbers were not bearing that out. And one of the great things about Raul and this book and his consulting is he will just help you see what the data is telling you, what the cold hard facts are. Here's what your customers are actually spending. You know, you think they are this, but here's when they default on payments. Or, you know, there was all these different things that really come in, and it's helped me, revamp my approach to say what's really moving me forward, what's really going to get my employees engaged, because that's the goal they need to buy into too. So I love this. I love this. So what do you mean when you talk about balancing kind of, especially for the people that are running the show, the founders, the CEOs, you say balancing your CEO 80-20. Talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. So the 80-20, and we use this a lot in the book, is essentially Pareto's principle that 20% of the outcomes or 20% of the inputs equal 80% of the outcomes. And the actual balance, the percentage doesn't matter. What does matter, the principle is that there are certain things that you're doing right now in your business that are producing the most significant gains, right? And that's found in principles in health, fitness, and business, and any organization pretty much, right? When it comes to the CEO, though, I've seen a lot of CEOs wear too many hats, and it's what in this chapter is helping transition which hats they should be wearing and to focus on 5 key focus areas for CEOs. Now, this isn't a hard set rule. This is what you must do as a CEO. And I explain that very clearly because there's not a should or should not do as a CEO, but these are suggested areas that should be a focus. And the 3 are soft areas, the areas that you think like, oh, cool, I put my mission statement up. Now what? Like, no, it's how do you drive that into the company culture? How do you actually drive initiative and the goals and the deadlines? And like looking at the vision. How does that bleed in your DNA? And then the other 2 areas are more marketing sales driven. Like how can you create strategic partnerships in your market right now? Not just one-to-one, but one-to-one to many. Those types of relationships a business development person could do, but that they're pretty expensive. But what the relationships for one-to-one to many takes 2 things, time and a CEO, right? So it's how can you leverage and focus your energy and your efforts? Because we all have 24 hours in a day, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And then also our own energies. If we're having mental bandwidth on things that are not as important, which are important, but like you can have someone on the team take care of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And I'm nodding and grumbling because I've been struggling with this today where I'm like project managing. That's not my job. Like I have a project manager now and that's her job. Like stop doing her job for her, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
stop. That's not the 20% of actions that I can do to get 80% of my revenue are creating content, getting on sales calls, right? Doing those things that nobody else can do, replicate to the same level. And that's the lesson I think so many people listening get caught in is I feel like I have to do it all and I don't know how to delegate or I keep getting sucked in. And I think this is great stuff. Let's talk about one that you mentioned before we got on air that I know everyone's ears are going to perk up because I get asked this question at least once to twice a day, which is evergreen workflows. Evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. Everyone wants automation. Everyone wants evergreen. Everyone wants robots to do everything for us.
Yeah.
So take us through that process, through those techniques that you talk about.
Okay. So for the evergreen workflows, every action in your company is a habit, right? So there's the habit of the sales call, and it's always going to be the same thing. You book an appointment, you show up, right? But with every action, though, you need to look into your core company departments, and we talked about this in our last interview, I believe. But within those, that every action is done either by you, someone else, or a machine, right? And it's distinguishing what should be done by whom, right? And which resources, which leverage, which tools, and whatever. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what tool to use, right? But it's looking at those key habits and how can you create frameworks so that those habits are done correctly. And then jumping a little bit to chapter 10, how can they be done with the minimum level of acceptability? Because as the founder, I mean, you're kind of the secret sauce, right? Like you have what it takes. Not everyone can be John Nemo.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but you know what I'm
no
saying.
One would anyone want to be. Do you know what it's
on.
like in this head? Yeah. No. Anyway. Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm saying, right? Not everyone can be the owner, and there's a certain
only
level.
One you. There's only one Steve Jobs. There's only one, visionary kind of leader, face of the brand. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then their level of output might be, let's say, at 90, right? The customer doesn't know the difference between 70 and 80. Right? What if the minimum level of acceptability for your team is 85? And you can have your team work and strive to hit the 85, and the customer's like, I'm happy with 70 because I can't tell the difference.
And the customer just wants the outcome and the result. Like
exactly.
This was something that you helped me with, and I've heard other people say, like, at the end of the day, especially if you're providing a service to people, and and you're like, I can't. I used to do this with my copywriting. Like I would literally write every piece of copy for the client. And it was like, at the end of the day, they didn't care so much about who wrote the copy as much as did it get them sales. You know what I mean? Like they don't care if I personally send the LinkedIn invite or someone on my team does. All they want is to get a client.
And momentum going. Yeah.
Get the moment, like get the outcome. And I think that's the other thing that so much of us, people listening, like we struggle with, well, I can't let go of it. And one of the best investments I made was hiring people that could match and even eclipse my abilities in certain areas. So hiring a copywriter that's better writer than me, best thing I ever did. Teaching and training that person, here's how, to capture the voice and here's how to do it. And then having it be so good that I can't even tell a difference anymore. When I present to the client, I'm like, did I write this? Man, this is exactly how I would have written it. I don't know if I did, like that's awesome. That's where really the secret sauce comes in. And then also what Raul pointed out, even as simple as booking an appointment. Think about this, because he said it's either you're doing it yourself, you have another person, or a machine doing it. Even the idea of, saving yourself so much time by getting your Google Calendar, blocking out all your things that you need to take care of in your day, leaving openings and gaps for calls, and then using a software tool so that you can just give that to a person. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit, Raul, not that long ago, I would go back and forth with someone trying to book a time. Well, what do you have available Tuesday? Well, then I'd have to wait for them in a different time zone to write back. Well, I'm available these times. How about and like, what am I doing? First of all, I'm the founder. Why am I emailing someone trying to book a 15-minute call? And then secondly, why didn't I just set up a calendar and a calendar link with my openings so they can fit into my schedule? Like that kind of stuff seems so simple, but it saves time. And why do you think, let's get into this, like, why do you think people struggle with this? Why do you think so many visionaries, founders, business owners struggle to take what now feel like basic steps?
Basic steps like for like the automation on the
Yeah, the
calendar.
evergreen workflows. Like, why is it we can't let go of thinking we can outsource things? Like, we can't figure out tools? Like, what? Because you said another key thing, which is people get hung up on the tools. Well, is it Calendly? Is it Book It Now? Is it and it's like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
is it just because a lot of founders and our people are just more creative types and they're not good business minds? Or what kind of hurdles do you see people running into with creating these evergreen workflows, the systems?
That's a great question. I think going back to the minimum level of acceptability, so that framework is there not to accept mediocrity, but to give you a level of framework that it's okay to have a team do it for you. Like, and they might not be as good as you, but that's okay. The job's getting done, and you can focus on getting 20 more opportunities by creating one new relationship. That's the kind of thinking that I want to inspire there. When it comes to getting in your own way to doing all this, I think it's going to be always like, quote unquote, I don't have enough time. But it's like saying I don't have enough time to focus on my health. I know it's important in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but devoting that energy and that effort, because it is building work. I mean, that's why I had to make it all very flow well and have each chapter progress with each other. And even when we work together, right? I couldn't just bust one call like, hey, John, this is what you got to do. It's progressive stretching, progressive growth, because it is building the infrastructure of the actual business. And typically businesses already have some sort of infrastructure, but it's all duct taped together.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
So we can't break that down and start from scratch, because this is another analogy I use, is that your business is like a train and you've got to fuel the engine. You got to fuel the engine, but you're also building the train tracks up ahead at the same time. The train, in my opinion, doesn't stop. Sales don't stop. Customers don't stop, get serviced. And if you read this all earlier in your career or in your business, then you have an advantage, right? You can set it up right from the get-go. But typically the train's already going.
Yes. I've run into this with my own business. This would be a good analogy for people listening. Like, I didn't know what I was doing when I first started creating online courses. I didn't know about platforms like Thinkific or Mighty Networks or these other ones where it's all pre-made to do course. So I hand built a bunch of online courses, and I ran into all kinds of technical issues, right? But I have to stop and look at, okay, is it worth stopping the entire train to fix these courses? Or do I keep enrolling people in the courses and moving forward, building the track? I'm going to build it on a new platform. Or is there enough pain from the existing clients in this platform to transition everybody over, to a new network? And kind of making those calls as a business owner, because you can get so sidetracked in the silliness. And I think one of the things Raul is really good at, to repeat my earlier analogy, is he'll come in and eviscerate you. He'll come in and just cut to the core and go,
not like that, but yeah.
Well, I know, I just like to be dramatic, but you were able to come in with my business and go, you're telling me this is your revenue goal, this is how many hours you want to work, and this is the style you want to achieve it in. Yet, one of the things you're doing is you're setting up these really low payment plans. People are, in general, no matter what, defaulting at this point. So you're really only getting X dollars out of each customer anyway. Why don't you switch and just sell it for this price? Because that's all you're, in most cases, it's all you're getting, instead of waiting months and months and chasing late payments. It's like, that's the kind of stuff you have to look at and, see what your business does and how to react to it. So let's bring this in for land, because I feel like there's so many different directions we can go. If someone is feeling completely overwhelmed, if someone's listening right now going, okay, yes, I want this book, I need help. What do I do? What's kind of your first step when somebody comes to you, Raul, in panic mode, like I did? What's kind of the process you take the overworked, frazzled business owner through to put this system in place?
Okay. So the process is actually the entire book laid out. Like, I gave everything. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad. I give everything. But the real, to lay it out clearly, the first step is to review called to goals, the goals that you're called to do, not just what you want to do. It's a clear difference. Once we have the framework of where you want to go, like you told me, I want to work X amount of hours, earn this much revenue per client, so on and so forth. Like, okay, cool. Now we have a framework, because
Yeah.
as creatives, our choice isn't limited. We have so many things that we can do. So
Yeah.
it's really good to create that framework of what we should do. Once you have that, and it's like, okay, cool. Let's figure out where are we currently at in your business strategically, and not focus on 1,001 items. Let's focus on the core essential, blood vessels of your company. And that's by checking your pulse. And then let's focus on where you're spending your energy. Let's focus if your team is the right team to take you on there. And then from there, let's package your team to create task units. And then let's teach and train your team so that they know how to do what they need to do without having to bother you. And then let's have you understand this is the new roadmap of what lies ahead and what you're going to expect and how you're going to address it as a real heroic leader. So that, in a nutshell, is the entire book, front to
I
cover to
love it.
cover.
Yeah. And I love what you said, because just in my own journey, I finally kicked myself into gear. And, like when we first talked about, one of my processes is I have, done for you agency, so I can do done for you LinkedIn campaigns. And one of your things that just floored me was there's a way to remove you from pretty much every aspect of the entire process, so that once you close the deal, you can literally be done and move on to the next lead. I'm like, no way, I've got to, do and it's like, it's happening. Like, I'm able to create step-by-step Google Docs with little on-screen, training videos for my team. And more importantly too, I'm training and setting up training in a way where anyone can step in and do it. So that way, if my employee that started out and learned it all by hand from me, if that person leaves, someone else can step in. Here's the document. Here's the videos. It's kind of idiot proof. And that's the kind of systemization I was missing that Raul brought and that this book brings. And I think one of the thoughts that I came back to, I want to finish on, our business coach, one of our mentors that we both love, John Michael Morgan, taught me this early on. And he goes, you have to have this mindset shift when you wake up each day as a business owner. Either you run the day or the day is going to run you. And you've got to make those decisions right now, here today, to say, I'm going to take control of my day. I'm going to literally block out time on my calendar for these core things. Maybe you block out 2 hours every morning to go through Raul's book and get your systems in place. Maybe you block out another 2 hours to create the training and to train your play. Like, you just have to do that. And like you told me, you were up front row with my business. You're like, there's gonna be some pain right now. It's not a lot of fun in the short term, but otherwise you'll never get out of this kind of self-created hamster wheel, which is—
How do you feel now though? Like, this is full circle. How do you feel?
Glory! I feel so much less stressed. I'm busier than ever, and I've brought in more business than ever, but I'm less stressed out. This time a year ago, I had the exact same scenario where I was bringing in all these done-for-you clients, but I was trying to deliver and service it all myself, or with very skeleton kind of staff who weren't trained and didn't have a plot process. And now I have a process in place. I have trainings in place. I literally just handed off something to an employee today and said, here's the exact document with the 48 steps in the videos, which, by the way, took me 3 or 4 hours to make, but now it's done. And forever and ever moving forward, anyone can take that document and do what used to take me a couple hours per client.
Yeah, that's
Now
an
I've
essential
saved up.
asset. That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's like, and so what I'm doing too is I'm learning. One of the other benefits I would say for people listening is when you do this process as the founder and the owner, and you actually kind of write out what the duties are when you're delivering a certain type of service or product to a client, like you actually have to write out the steps and make little training videos on the screen. You start to see the inefficiencies, or you start to see, oh, here's where I'm messing up. Like, here's a template I should be creating to onboard the client, and here's a template I should be creating to teach my staff to do this, that, by the way, now I can use. And so there's all this benefit to, I guess for me, and I'm just turning this into an episode of Oprah analyzing myself, but basically I'm such a creative and love just doing stuff and passionate and energetic. I don't have the business brain to go, how do I systemize that? How do I make that a scalable process that someone else can take and do? And there's all that resistance that you have because I just want to do the next fun thing, and that's not fun. But once I created it and handed it off, that frees up so much stress and frees up so much worry and just lets me do more of what I love. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to put my health first. And so that means I am going to wake up early and get a workout every day. It may not necessarily be something I love, but I'm going to have more energy and more time to do what I love and live longer. And it's worth doing, like, especially if you want to have a long-term sustainable business. And I think that's what this book does, is kind of give you a blueprint from someone that's done it in the trenches like Raul has. Another thing I really like about you, since I'm lauding you left and right here, is I love that you didn't even mention, you didn't drop all your academic pedigree, but like you went to and studied and did a lot of high-end kind of, I don't want to call it academic, but like schooling, business schooling, and studying with top mentors and CEOs. And, that was your formative time in college, was really studying all the processes, but then you went out and applied it in the real world.
Yeah, that program I feel like is amazing. Yeah,
I feel like your readers get the best of both. I feel like your readers and your clients now get, yes, Raul has all the academic and theoretical background, but he went out and practiced it. And now you kind of have the polished, finished version. Would you say that's accurate?
I think it's pretty accurate. It's more like not just the academics, but seeing behind the scenes of those businesses and seeing like the raw reality of business.
Yeah, how the machinery really works and where the inefficiencies are. Because that's the other thing that nobody shares authentically is, well, here's what it really looks like to have an internet business, right? Like, no one's really telling, like, everyone's putting a Facebook ad in front of a sports car, push a button and make millions. It's like, there's a lot more to running an agency than that. Right. And you can't scale that effectively. And it's so interesting because, there are so many different things, and I didn't learn a lot of these till I met you, and then till I've had the chance to be behind the scenes in masterminds and things with other kind of people that have a business that I want to have, and learning, you never talk about this, but that's how you do that. You never told anyone this, but that's how you behind the scenes create all that content, or that's how behind the scenes you seem to be able to deliver everything to everyone efficiently. Like, I didn't realize what you're doing under the hood, or the method to the madness behind your latest marketing strategy. Nobody told me that you mapped that out for 6 months based off customer data and surveys you analyzed. I just thought you came up with that idea on a whim. Like, there's a lot more under the hood that people don't know about. And I think this book is a great look at that. So that's why I wanted to get you back on roll. Okay, so before we finish, is there anything else I didn't ask about that you want to share or point out about the book, about anything else that we've talked about today?
No, I think we covered like everything. And honestly, hearing your take on it and your actual application is super inspiring to see how much of an impact it's made for your business. Because I remember our initial consults, was that a year ago or something? But
yeah,
I remember that. And you're on the other side, and that's the tough part to convey. Like, there is another side.
Yeah.
This other side exists. It feels amazing.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I was self-sabotaging last year. This is a perfect example. My business coach called me out on it, John Morgan. And I was like, all of a sudden my sales tanked late last year. Just went down the tubes. And I'm like, what's wrong? Is it my tools? Is it my copy? Is it this? Is it that? And I had a coaching call with John Morgan. He goes, hey, you're self-sabotaging because you're feeling so overwhelmed delivering all this to these clients. You're subconsciously don't want any new business. So even though you need to put more fuel in the engine with more sales and high ticket done for you, you're not doing it because you're afraid. Your mindset right now is, I have to do all this myself. I don't have enough time as it is. I'm already stressed out. This year, the difference is, Raul, like, I'm ready. I wake up every day like, who else can I tell? Right? Like, I'm not at all worried about if I put 10 more people in today and now have a team in place where I'm not scared. And that was not the case a year ago. And that's the kind of stuff you don't realize until you're on the other side and you go, oh, that's why the business is only going to grow, because I'm not slowing myself down anymore with fear under the hood of, I don't want any more work, because it's not more work for me necessarily. It's really just more work for the team. And then they're improving and I'm adding people and it's scaling. but it's in a way too where I feel comfortable because I'm like, I already have a process for that. Like
Now
I
you're
had
a
to,
facilitator. Now you just facilitate your scale.
yeah, I just literally handed someone a document today and said, go onboard this client into Entreport, set up their emails, set up their tags, set up campaign sequences, set up decision trees, set up a landing page, which normally if I trained you, it would take 5-10 hours. Here's the Google Doc and the screen videos. Knock yourself out. See you on the other side, like, and I'm on to the next call. I'm like, that's great. I don't have to do that anymore. And the other real benefit too, as a person running a done for you service is you can't, at least for me, I couldn't dip in and out of each client's businesses to that depth every single day and then have my game on. Whereas now I can say, okay, I've got this one client I can focus on today, moving, the part of the project forward that only I can do, as opposed to, and then I have to jump out of that deep work into another client. And where do we leave off again? And what, tactical things am I supposed to be setting up and what tools? Oh, they had a question about the software and the login. And like, you just get so distracted and scattered and you feel overwhelmed, as opposed to, no, I have a team handling all that. I can stay in the deeper part with this client in the strategy. So even today we had a client say, hey, right now as we're recording this will come out later, but coronavirus is going bonkers and everything. And this client's a wealth management planner. And this client's like, I've got these great ideas of, let's put a LinkedIn campaign together around, what to do with your money. And if we hit a huge recession and, some different tips around financial planning. And instead of me freaking out and being like, but you're not set up yet and we have to put you into, LinkedIn, this and that, I can just hand it to my team and be like, here's the strategy, go implement it for the client. And that's like a different world. So yeah, man, your stuff is amazing. And it's like, it's not only important from a business sense that, you've got to implement all this to actually grow your business and make more money and be more successful. It's like your mental health. I just don't know how else to say it. Like to avoid burnout and freak out and self-sabotage. And then, because John Morgan taught me a long time ago, he's like, leads are oxygen. If you're not out doing lead generation every day and sales, right, they're literally the lifeblood of your business. If you start sabotaging yourself in those areas because you feel too overwhelmed delivering what you already have, now you're in that feast or famine cycle. As opposed to, I'm totally fired up to keep putting more business in, and I've got a team that implements, and like you said, Raul, delivers to an acceptable level.
Yeah.
Is it the exact way I would write that sentence of their profile? No. Does it get the client what they want, which is business? Yes. Does the client care at the end of the day? No. They don't care as long as they get what they paid me for, which is the outcome, the result they wanted.
The results, yeah. Dude,
they just want the results. And that's the big lesson of, what Raul's got going with his book. So everyone get this book. It's called Productive Profits. I know, Raul, your site is do-goodwork.io. So dogoodwork.io. And then if you go /book, there's a link to the Productive Profits book. It's obviously on Amazon. Just look for Raul Hernandez. Incredible, incredible insight. You're somebody that you are so nice. I brought you back twice because I knew you had a lot more value to bring people. And I really appreciate you too, kind of pulling back the curtain on how you ate your own dog food for this and created a book and created a system and created a way to get it, word to paper and putting it out. So amazing stuff. Thank you so much again for coming on, my friend.
I'm honored, man. Thank you.